The first TOEFL speaking task is the only independent task. Independent means no reading, no listening, speaking only, and it's about you. It's also the shortest task, 15 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to speak. It's called the choice because the prompt usually presents you with alternatives. The word alternative means one of only two. So you're asked to choose between two things and support your preference. Do you like dogs or cats, for example? As I stated, in order to do well on the speaking section, you have to know the writing section, especially on this task, because more than any other task, I think the outline or structure for the response for this task most closely mirrors the outline for an argumentative essay, which is the independent essay in the writing section. So if you're not familiar with basic essay writing concepts like indirect or direct thesis statement, supporting points or controlling ideas, specific examples with sensory details, conclusions, transitions, it's time to go back and learn the writing first, and I include that information in the description. I said outline because, again, as I stated, I like to give outlines to my clients for their responses for the speaking tasks. And I know you may feel silly following an outline when you speak, like a computer or a robot, but I do that because of the strict timing of the speaking section, on which, again, your goal is not to be creative, but just to be clear. And I know your level of spoken English is excellent, but if you speak freely, you risk rambling, which is to speak indirectly without making a point, or not answering the question and not doing what the prompt asks you to do. So let's talk about the outline or structure for the response for this task. It has 6 items in it, and each item is only one sentence. There's an introduction and a conclusion, and sandwiched in between in the body, there are 2 supporting points accompanied by 2 specific examples. Why 2? Normally in the writing section, you have 3 supporting points, and the 3rd supporting point is the refutation that accompanies the counter-argument. Understandably, the major difference between the writing and speaking sections is that the speaking section is so much shorter, and the prompt asks you for reasons, plural, or examples, plural, or details, plural, so you have to give more than 1, but you don't have time for 3. So that leaves 2. In other words, there's no counter-argument and refutation. The first item in the outline, again, is the introduction, and because each item is only one sentence, it's just the thesis statement. A thesis statement is always 2 things, main idea plus supporting points. Your main idea for this task is, of course, your preference, your choice. And whereas on the writing, I really prefer that you give a direct thesis statement that summarizes the supporting points in it. In my experience, I find no one has time to give a direct thesis statement. So you will probably give an indirect thesis statement that will sound something like, I prefer X for 2 reasons, indicating that you will give supporting points, but not saying what they are. If you want to give a direct thesis statement that summarizes the supporting points in it, because you feel you have time, you can, but you're going to have to repeat those supporting points in the body. So let's talk about the body of your response. Again, 2 supporting points accompanied by 2 specific examples. For the supporting points, I want you to do something a little different for this task because it is a preference, a choice between 2 things. I want you to say why you like the thing you chose and why you don't like the thing you didn't choose. And those 2 points cannot be the same thing. So for example, if I ask you to choose between black and white, and you say, well, I like black because it's dark, and I don't like white because it's light, those 2 points are pretty much the same thing. So that's exactly what I don't want you to do. For the first supporting point, you will say something like, I prefer X because A, and for the second supporting point, the verb prefer really doesn't have an opposite. So you might say something like, I don't like Y because B. And again, those 2 supporting points have to be 2 different things. We always illustrate supporting points with specific examples. Specific examples are narratives, little stories, and especially on the speaking section, they do not have to be true. So here is where you can get creative, you can invent. I often ask my clients to write down in advance of the exam one man's name and one woman's name, and these are your imaginary friends about whom you will invent narratives or little stories. Try to introduce your examples with transitions. In English, there really are only 2 transitions for examples, for example and for instance, and to make it sound real, try to set it at a specific moment in time with a time expression like once, one time, when, or while. So after 2 supporting points accompanied by 2 specific examples, finally it's time for your conclusion, which as always is a restatement of the thesis statement. Try to give a transition for the conclusion, in summary, to sum up, to conclude, to summarize, and repeat your indirect thesis statement. For those reasons, I prefer X. So that's an introduction to the first TOEFL speaking task, the independent task, the choice. To read more in detail, including an example prompt and outline an example response, please visit my website. I include that information in the description. And for a private lesson with me, please also visit my website. That information too is in the description. I've worked online with people from all over the world, and I'd love to work with you. Take care.